Internet! Today I'm here to do my June monthly recommendations video. This month the topic is retellings, so I'm going to be recommending some retellings for you today. Now, to be completely honest, I really didn't read a whole lot of retellings until I kind of started getting more into BookTube. So there's a lot of them that I haven't read yet, to be honest, so I feel like the list is a little short. So I thought I'd also include some books off of my TBR. I noticed in the monthly recommendations group that some other people were doing that, and I thought that sounded like a really great idea, because there's still ones that I'm interested in reading. If you don't even know what monthly recommendations is, it's a Goodreads group that was started by Kayla Rain and Trina from Between Chapters, so I'll link the group in the description in case you want to join and check it out. But you basically make a recommendations video every month and there's a different topic every month. So I'm going to recommend some retellings for you today. The first series that I have to share with you is a pretty popular one. I would be surprised if you haven't at least heard of them already, but it was kind of my first experience with reading retellings, and that is The Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer. And these books are sci-fi retellings of fairy tales. So the first book is Cinder, which, you know, of course is kind of retelling of Cinderella, and then the further you get into the series, all of the characters from the previous book show up and that storyline continues, and you just kind of get introduced to more characters. So we've got Cinder first, then book 2 is Scarlet, and this one's kind of a Red Riding Hood retelling. Cress, which is Rapunzel, and the last book is Winter, and this one is Snow White. And then you also have kind of, I guess, book 3.5, which is Fairest, and this is about the villain of the overall story, Queen Lavanna, who I guess you could consider kind of like the evil queen. And then you've got Stars Above, which is a collection of novellas. I really love the Lunar Chronicles. I'm not that big into sci-fi, but I really love how it's a sci-fi novel that combines a lot of fairy tale elements to it, and they were just a lot of fun. I will say I think the last book was my favorite, just because I really loved the way everything was wrapped up. I think if you're kind of leery about sci-fi or even retellings, it's a good series to start with. Next, I have another series that's probably going to be on a lot of people's lists, and that is the A Court of Thorns and Roses series by Sarah J. Maas. So we have A Court of Thorns and Roses, which is the first book, and it's kind of a retelling of Beauty and the Beast. A very loose retelling, but a retelling all the same. And then we've got A Court of Mist and Fury, which is the second book, and it's kind of a Hades and Persephone retelling. And then we have the third book that just recently came out, and I'll be honest, I have not read this one yet, but it's A Court of Wings and Ruin, and I'm not sure if this is a retelling of anything or not. I haven't heard anyone mention it, so I'm not sure, but I can't speak for this book, but I kind of liked the first book. It wasn't my favorite, but I really, really loved the second book, and I think it's worth reading the series just to get to the second book. And I don't know about the third book. I'm planning on reading it this month, but this is a pretty popular series here on BookTube. I would be surprised if you haven't read it yet. It's about Fae, and you should check it out if you haven't. The next retelling I want to talk about is Heartless by Marissa Meyer, and this book is kind of, it's sort of a retelling, but it's also kind of more of a reimagining. It is a reimagining of what the Queen of Hearts backstory would be, and it was pretty good. It was one of my more highly anticipated books of last year. I was pretty impressed with it. It wasn't my favorite. I guess you could say I didn't like it as much as I was expecting to, but I still thought it was really good. I loved the way Marissa Meyer wrote it. She just used a writing style that worked perfect for the story, and the story was pretty entertaining. I think it's definitely worth reading. I don't love it as much as the Lunar Chronicles that she wrote, but I still really enjoyed this book, and I think you would really especially like it if you're a fan of Alice in Wonderland, because it's about the Queen of Hearts and her backstory. So next I have The Wrath and the Dawn duology by Renee Ahdieh. So we've got the first book, which is The Wrath and the Dawn, and the sequel, which is The Rose and the Dagger, and this is a duology that's kind of a retelling of 1001 Nights. I will say I personally really enjoyed the first book more than the second book, but then I've heard a lot of people say that they liked the second book more than the first book. Overall, I thought this was a pretty fantastic story, and I think it's definitely worth reading. It's incredibly diverse, which is awesome, overall I thought it was pretty good, and these covers are absolutely gorgeous. So you need to put them on your bookshelves, you know? And the last series I have to talk about as far as the books that I have read is the Dorothy Must Die series by Danielle Page. Now, I've only read the first 2 books, and I'm basically recommending the series because of the first book, Dorothy Must Die. I thought this was a really fun story. Definitely not the best book I've ever read, not the best retelling I've ever read, but a lot of fun. I did not really care for the sequel that much, The Wicked Will Rise. It just was kind of a letdown compared to the first book. But I'm still recommending it because I thought the first book was pretty good, and I can't speak for the rest of the series. There's 2 more books in the series that I have not read yet, so maybe it gets better after the second book. I don't really know. If you've read the series, let me know in the comments if it does. No spoilers, of course, but I thought the first book was a lot of fun, so I wanted to go ahead and add it to my list anyway. And then since my list is kind of short, I thought I would just add a couple of different retellings that are on my TBR. So first I have the Ravenspire series by CJ Redwine, which is a series of companion retelling. So they all take place in the same world, but they're all different stories. There's only 2 books out so far. I'm currently reading The Shadow Queen, which is a Snow White retelling, and I'm not very far into it, but I'm really enjoying it so far. It's very intense, and I've heard really good things about it, so I'm really looking forward to finishing it. And then the sequel, The Wish Granter, like I said, it's a companion series, so I don't think this really has much to do with the Shadow Queen as far as like characters and plot, but it does take place in the same world. But The Wish Granter is a retelling of Rumpelstiltskin, so I am really excited to get to this one. And then the last group of books I'm going to talk about is the Wicked Years series, I think this is what this is called, by Gregory Maguire. The first book is Wicked. Of course, it's a very, very famous Broadway musical. It's my favorite Broadway musical. It has a special place in my heart. For personal reasons, I just really, really love it. But I have not read the book. I've heard that the book is a bit different from the musical, but I'm still really, really looking forward to reading this year. And I also own the second book, which is Son of a Witch. And I think there's 2 more books in this series. I think it's a quartet. So I have plans to read Wicked this year. It's on my top 10 to read in 2017 list. And hopefully soon after I read Wicked, I'll get to Son of a Witch. So that's it for this month's monthly recommendations. If you have any recommendations for me, leave those in the comments, please, because retellings is a genre that, like I said, is still kind of new to me, but I really, really like. So I would love to hear other recommendations for ones that you think are really good. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and end this now. I think it's long enough. And I will see you guys next time with another video. Bye.